Thank you for joining Love Dripping from the Walls, the podcast with Elizabeth Cunningham, which is me. And I started this podcast because I had this idea of love dripping from the walls of your life and how to create love dripping from the walls of your life and what that looks like every single day and what people are doing and how you get confronted in having love in your life. And I expanded upon this idea in actually having conversations with people and having other people tell their stories and the things that they bump up against, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and all of the life experiences that we all have, every day inside of creating relationships and love and how it shows up for us. And, the other thing that I wanted to accomplish out of this podcast is just having a level of acceptance for how people express their love, regardless of how that shows up, and creating a community and an environment where people get to be able to express their love however they'd like to. So this first episode is a conversation between myself and my friend Jess, where she is interviewing me about my life, some of my experiences that I've had inside of my own sexuality, inside of being polyamorous, inside of, just stories that I have from my life that have built and expanded upon who I am and how love shows up for me. I hope you enjoy this conversation.
Okay, so I'm hanging out with Elizabeth Cunningham. I met her because she is the studio manager of Kula Movement, which is where I go for my yoga time. Mm-hmm. And she's also a teacher and does really awesome classes, mostly vinyasa and then guided meditation, yin yoga kind of classes. And then she also does a bunch of other stuff. Tell us about some of the other stuff that you do.
I do a bunch of other stuff. So let's see. I am partnering with Parkour Visions in creating some programs for them, movement programs. I am doing this podcast.
Yes.
Yes. And I also am leading retreats. I'm partnering with one travel agency currently to lead retreats in different parts of the world.
What?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Have you done any of them yet, or what's the next one you're doing?
I have not done any of them yet. The next one that's scheduled is for next year in May.
That's awesome. And then on top of that, part of the reason why we're doing this podcast is you've been active in the polyamory community, would you say, in general?
Yeah, I mean, not so much in Seattle
in
necessarily, but active in my life for sure. And I do polyamory coaching, so I do polyamory and open relationship coaching.
It's really cool.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's definitely fulfills a huge part of who I am, to be able to provide a space for other people to work through and discover things about themselves and their relationships that just makes your life sing.
Yeah.
Because the relationships that you have in your life really can dictate how your whole life goes.
That's a good point. Who you spend time with and what you do with them and how they nourish you or challenge you.
Yeah, exactly. If you're having a hard time in your relationship, all other areas of your life can suffer. Yeah.
When did you realize that you were polyamorous?
I guess.
Did you always know?
I always know. I think
the baby. But I love everyone.
I think at least with myself and my own sexuality and different aspects of my sexuality, it was always there. I just didn't
know what it was.
I didn't have a language for it.
Yeah.
And then so I was in multiple monogamous relationships until I was 20. Gotcha. And was it 20, 21? 21. And the last relationship that I was in college, and I was so in love with the person that I was with, just so in love with him, but I also was super attracted to other people, and I thought that I was a terrible person. I was just I'm a terrible person, I'm attracted to other people.
How is this possible?
How is this possible? I hated myself. I was just I hate myself, and I actually told him that.
Wow.
And I remember
what was his reaction?
he was just, like, felt really sorry for me. You know, like, what can you do? Like, what can you do when you're,
he
like...
He didn't want to open up the relationship.
Well, I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah,
like, I was just, like, I grew up in the Midwest where it's just, like, you're either in a monogamous relationship or you're cheating. Like, that's it. Like, those are your only two options. And so, being in college, I would, like, go out and get drunk and make out with people.
Yeah.
Which he was totally not okay with.
And then you probably felt like, would you tell him about that and apologize, or would you keep it a secret?
No, I would tell him. I felt terrible. Like,
and you
the
wanted
next morning,
to make it work.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I want to be, like, I want it to work. Like, I want to be open. Like, I want to be transparent. And, like, here I am having feelings for other people, and I just feel like a terrible person.
Yeah.
And then finally he was like, hey, this isn't working for me, which, understandable. Like, for him, he's like, I just want to be with you, and you're going out and getting drunk and making out with people, and that doesn't work for me. And I'm like, I totally get that. And then when he broke up with me, I was just like,
fuck my life.
Well, yeah, fuck my life. And also, I was just like, fuck it. Like,
I'm like, well, that didn't work. Not trying that again.
Yeah, well, I was just like, fuck it. Like, I'm just gonna, I clearly am attracted to multiple people at once, so I'm just gonna do that.
Yes.
Like, I was just like, I'm just gonna do that. I'm gonna date whoever I want, and I'm gonna sleep with whoever I want.
I'm not gonna make any promises to anyone.
Not make any promises, and I'm gonna tell everyone.
Yes.
I was like, I'm going to tell every single person that
that no one feels like I'm misleading them or whatever, and then the people who like that will come to me.
Exactly. And I was studying, so I was going to the University of Kansas, and part of my major is actually human sexuality.
Cool.
And so I was already studying that anyway, because I think that it's fascinating. Mm-hmm. And I was also going, outside of school, I was going to these lectures, the Sexual Education Committee lectures, every single week, and they would have different people come and talk about...
Speakers.
Yeah, different speakers, or different people in the community, or, like, they had everyone from, like, therapists to just people who had that experience in their life, or, you know, and so one of the weeks they had a poly panel, and they had 4 people who were polyamorous come and speak, and I had never heard the term polyamory before. And
you never heard anybody define it and talk about it?
No, or, like, talk about it or anything. And so I was so intrigued, and I came, and I was like, oh my god, these are my people.
Yes.
Like, this is how I feel about life. This is how I feel about people. Like, I'm so recreated, right? And, like, everything that they say.
It was like, whoa.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my god. I was like, I'm not crazy. Yes.
Yes.
And it was just, like, such an empowering, like, space to be in my life. Because really, like, I thought that there was something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And I also used to joke about being a professional slut.
Yes! I love that. Oh, it's amazing.
I was just like, no, I'm a professional slut. Like, this is what I do.
My God.
Like, I have this handled.
That's amazing. I love that.
In retrospect, I had nothing handled, but...
At least you had a good title going.
Right.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so I was just like, wow, these are my people. This is so great. And then I was like, wow, now I have a word and I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, now just starting to explore, well, you know, at that time, starting to explore, like, what polyamory means to me and what it looks like for me and what it looks like for other people and the conversations that you can have about that and navigating that whole world. It's like this whole other world and web of people that you can be connected to.
Yeah.
You know, and so one of the reasons for me wanting to have this podcast is just to share all of the things that I have learned.
Yeah. Yeah.
From everything that's happened to me, everything that I've done, all the mistakes that I've made, like, everything that's gone totally wrong, like, and all the things that I've done that, like, now really work, or, like, now, you know, like, the tools that I've gained and, like, the knowledge that I've gained too.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
I love it.
I'm curious, for people who are, you know, just starting to explore their own identity, how would you define the difference between polyamory and ethical non-monogamy? And did you run into any issues of, like, you might be falling in love with someone, but really they just sleep with a lot of people and they're not, like, like, the romantic versus the sexual. Like, how would you distinguish that for, like, polyamory versus just people who, you know, sleep with a lot of different people and maybe have a partner or something?
Sure. So, yeah, so ethical non-monogamy is more of an umbrella term for all, like, polyamory falls into the category of ethical non-monogamy. Because ethical non-monogamy can really look like kind of like
a lot of different things.
It can look like so many different things. Like it really can be just like, I have one person that I'm committed to, that I'm like in a romantic relationship with, and they are like my person, my heart.
Yeah. And
we have sex with other people, and those relationships or whatever you want to call connections or whatever, like, are purely sexual, have nothing to do with like emotions or like how I feel about that person or wanting to start a relationship with anyone or like anything like that.
Maybe it's my own mind not expanding enough, but it's hard for me personally to even understand like what it's like to want to sleep with someone that you have no like feelings for at all. Maybe I just like catch feelings really easily, or I'm only really attracted to people where I'm like, you're an amazing person, but it's almost like hard for me to even understand like what it would be like to be like, this is just for sex, because I'm like, well, sex by itself isn't like that interesting, but everybody to each their own.
Well, and it's also like at different stages in your life too.
That's true. That's true. Because
like
people need things at different times.
Yeah, totally. Because when I was like going around telling people that I was a professional slut, like a lot of that was just about sex for me. Yeah. Like there were only like 3 people that I was seeing that I actually like had feelings for, and like and told all 3 of those people that I loved them. Yeah. Right? Like I was like, I love you. Like I had like a deep, you know, connection with those people. And I was still like sleeping with other people just because like I love sex.
Yeah. Like, this is fun.
Right, this is fun. Like, this is a good pastime for me.
But also, you probably did like those people more than just, like, random person off the street, maybe.
No, I mean, really. Like, I definitely had, I definitely had, like, one-night stands. Yeah. Where it was just, like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am.
That's awesome.
Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
But I don't do that anymore. Which is the point that I was making, is
different
that, like...
stages.
Yeah, totally, because, I mean, your sexuality changes throughout your whole life. Like, who I was as a sexual person at 16...
is so different, yeah.
Right, is so different than who I was at 19, which was so different than who I was at 22, which was so different than who I was at 25, which is so different than, you know, me now, right? Yeah. Where it's just, like... You're constantly evolving, and your needs are constantly changing, and your life looks totally different. Like, my life looks totally different now than it did when I was in college.
Yeah, so. Totally.
Yeah, and it's just...
And you're mixing with different people, too, in different situations.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so now, for me, like, I definitely don't go out looking for one-night stands. And I don't go out looking for, like, just sex or anything like that. Like, I'm in a couple...
You probably also know a lot of people now that want to have sex with you that you care about, just because you're older and you've been living in Seattle for a while. So, like, that might cover all of your sexual bases, kind of. Right. It's like, well, if I'm really horny, I have, like, 5 people that I really care about that I could call.
I mean, you're not wrong.
It's only, like, 20. Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of, like, the misconceptions about polyamory, is that when people think of, like, polyamory or open we should go back to the whole non-monogamy, or not, like, ethical non-monogamy thing. We went on a tangent.
Yes.
So ethical non-monogamy, it can look a lot of different ways. Polyamory, what polyamory is poly is multiple, and amory is love, right? So multiple people that you love. So kind of what I was talking about, like, when I was in college and I had 3 people that I was dating who I did, like, deeply love. And, like, we told each other that we loved each other. And I've had that, you know, since then, where I've been in, you know, multiple relationships where I deeply love, you know, the people that I'm in those relationships with, right? I actually posted something on my Facebook the other day that was like, polyamorous. Yes, I'm polyamorous, and yes, I really do believe that you can love more than one person at a time.
Do you feel like that love is like a distinct romantic love, or through like deeply loving so many people, do you feel like there's less of a line between like a deep friendship kind of love and a like deep friendship plus you also have sex? Like, do you see where I'm going with that?
I do see where you're going with that. How I'm going to answer that is that once you start opening yourself up to however love shows up in your life.
Yeah.
And this is, like, so perfect. The title is Love Dripping from the Walls.
Yes.
It's like, once you start opening yourself up to however love shows up in your life, then you start to discover the unique love that you have with all people.
Yeah.
Like, you really start to discover, and that how that manifests in each relationship is specific to that relationship. Right? Because it's like, you're one of my friends, and I love you very much.
Yeah.
And that's how our love shows up, is friendship.
Right.
Right? And in my partners, it shows up, and you love your friends different ways too. Like, you might love one friend in one way and love another friend another way.
Right.
And you still tell each friend that you love them.
Well, what I was just thinking, actually, is that I feel like I've opened up more to that idea subconsciously as I've maybe because since I've been with Anders and we have more of like an ethical, non-monogamous situation, whereas I used to have a lot of very possessive partners. But I feel like there's friends that I love deeply where I can almost see like two alternate realities where it's like if we did have a sexual relationship, we might love each other more intensely, but it's actually like the same love that it always was, kind of, which is like really beautiful to not feel like it's necessarily like this is romantic love and this is friend love.
Right. Totally. Like, what I tell people is that one of the reasons why I love being polyamorous is that all of my relationships can be fully self-expressed.
Yes.
Right?
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's just like each relationship can be fully self-expressed, and there's no like limits or boundaries or like
this is that.
It has to look this way or it has to look another way. It can really be created between two people. That's really cool. And that's how it shows up with my partners, where it's like we can create whatever we want. I have a primary partner currently. Where she actually said the other day, she goes, one of the things that I love about you is that you always remind me that we can create whatever we want.
Yes.
I know, isn't that so great?
Elizabeth has like the hottest and most cool girlfriend, Brandy, who's like a parkour extraordinaire, who's like in Australia right now training with the originators of parkour, and they're like little like athlete toddies like running through the streets together.
I love it. I was gonna say I love it. Like totally imagine that. That's so great.
I just imagine Brandy reaching back with her hand and then you grabbing and then jumping off a building together.
I would never jump off a building.
Okay, fair. A small building.
A small building.
Like
a small
structure building.
Right, like a doghouse.
Oh my god.
I will jump off a doghouse into her arms.
Yes.
Yay, parkour. Like, no, awesome. Parkour is awesome.
Yes.
And it's more than just jumping off buildings. She would get, I was going to say, if she listens to this podcast and she's like, parkour is not just jumping off buildings. I'm like, I'm sorry, I love you. That's what I'm imagining. No, she's super rad. Thanks for bragging her up, because usually I do that.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Whoops. So... have you had different primary partners over the course of your polyamorous life, and how has your experience of that changed or not changed over time in terms of like that being something that you need in your life, or do you feel like it just happens when there's like a person who's kind of almost like your best friend but more?
Yeah, no, it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
Because for example, like going back to college, when I was dating those 3 people, I wouldn't say that any one of them were my primary partner.
Yeah.
Like, that was probably the last time that happened, where
Gotcha.
I didn't have a primary partner.
Gotcha.
And I did that on purpose.
Because you're like, I'm in college, you know.
Yeah, totally. I was just like, and it was one of those things where I was discovering what polyamory was to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't
Having
necessarily.
That boundary is kind of
yeah, and I was
good
just
for you
like,
to be able to explore.
yeah, totally. And I was just, I didn't, since I had just come from, like, the world of monogamy, I was like, oh, I don't want to have a primary partner and then have that partner think that that we're, like, that there's going to be, like, any limitations.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I kind of had, like, a fear about it.
Yeah, because you're like, so I don't want to get subconsciously drawn back into the same shit that I've been doing, basically.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I don't want to, like, revert back. Like, I just discovered, like, this new part of myself, and that I love this, and this is who I am, and I don't want to, like, like, ruin it, or, you know, whatever I thought at the time. And, but then I met someone, I had a couple relationships since then that really had me test that in myself, because, you know, the person that I was dating wasn't necessarily as open as I am. Like, not totally not open, but not as open as me, right? And then it wasn't until
Do you feel like maybe that person was more on the side of not being polyamorous, but being just wanting an open relationship?
Yeah, that was definitely something that I've run into several different times, where it's like, and that was something that I got really frustrated with for, like, several years, and just, like, really kind of broken down by, and just, like, brokenhearted by, because, you know, and I think this is specifically something that happens with women, not that it doesn't happen with men,
right.
But especially, like, women who date men, because I date, like, all genders, right? But specifically women who date men, where there is this dynamic of when a woman wants to be in an open relationship, then the man is going to be like, oh yeah, like, let's try it out. Because in my experience, I guess I shouldn't blanket statement it, but it's just like, they're like when I would tell, like, guys that I just met, that, or, like, however I met them or whatever.
They're just thinking about probably boning you, so they're like, I'll deal with the whole you personality later and what you like to do with your life, and then they're like, wait, I really like not sharing you, and you're like, that's not a thing.
Well, and it's also, I think it's a couple things. I think, number one, it's, I really want to be with you, and so I'm just gonna say yes, and we'll see how it goes.
Right. I don't even know where this is going yet.
Exactly. Like, I don't even know where it's going enough yet to, like, have, like, a really, like, solid opinion about it.
But at the same time, if you are, I think it is kind of people's responsibility to know themselves enough to know that, like, if, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, if you're trying to explore and you're like, I really like this person, but at the same time, like, if you look deep inside yourself and you're like, well, I don't really know, but I really like them, it's like, it's not really fair to other people to, I don't know.
Regardless of whether it's fair or not, that's just kind of how it happens sometimes. True. And, you know, some people don't have that wherewithal within themselves, which is, you know, like, people are in their own stage of growth and development at any point in time, right? And I think the other reason why, like, these guys would say yes to dating me is because I'm like, because I'm very transparent. I'm just like, hey, you like me? Okay, I'm polyamorous. Yeah. Like, this is what that means. Yeah. You know, this is how I roll. Yeah. I will never be any other way. Yeah. You know? And
if you want to get on the train,
if you want to get on the train, then that's up to you. But I'm just letting you know right now that that's what the ride is. Like, and I think that the idea is exciting too, because just like, oh, like, there's this, you know, freedom that maybe they've thought about but never had the opportunity to explore. Yeah. And so it's more like an experiment
Yeah.
too.
Like, I don't know. This could really go either way.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I could love this.
Yeah, it could be great.
Yeah.
And then there's the actual, but then when you're talking about a relationship, when it's new and you're like, you're talking about it, it's all in theory.
Right.
And then you actually put it into practice, like in real life, and then you like call them and you're like, hey, I'm going on a date with someone, and then they actually have to deal with
the emotional,
like whatever emotions come up or whatever like thoughts come up or whatever There's no, it's like training for something. It's like you can talk about it as much as you want to talk about it, but you don't you don't know how you're going to react until it actually happens.
That's true.
Right? And so then...
I don't know why my mind was like giving birth.
I mean, yeah.
Yes. Good example, Jess.
Good example. That was a very good example. Excellent.
Yes.
Perfect analogy.
Giving birth to new love.
Oh my god. But yeah, so then they'd be like, oh, I don't like these emotions. I don't like these thoughts. Like, I don't... You know, whatever. And so then they're like, oh, well, maybe... And then the mind goes to... The brain is like, oh, well, if I don't like this, then I don't want to be in this relationship.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's very interesting. It's very... and so what that would look like in my life, like... in real time, is that then I would be dating these people who then once polyamory gets put into practice or open relationship gets put into practice, then the people that I'm dating are like, oh shoot, like I'm out. You know?
Yeah.
And so then, and it's really heartbreaking because I do like, you know...
You start to get invested.
Yeah, because I start to get invested and I really like this person and it really, you know, it just sucks, right?
Yeah.
And so that was something that I had to... that I, you know, like, you try not to take something personally. You're like, okay, I get that this is about you.
Right.
And that hurts.
And,
ow.
Yeah, and it's and this is very deeply personal to me at the same time, even though it's not about that.
And that was something that I had to learn as well about, just being with people and that people are on their own journey and that I can love them anyway.
Yeah. Do you feel like as you went through your own journey, you became less likely to want to start something with people like that, or you're still...
I think you start to hear in people's speaking, like, where they're at.
Yeah, they're, like, deeper...
Yeah.
I feel like you're pretty good with, like, psychology in, like, conversation.
I'm pretty
Sometimes
good
it almost freaks me out because I'm like, she's so perceptive. I can't hide from her. Which is good.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, I've also had a lot of training in, like, listening to people. Like,
like deep listening.
Right, with, like, coaching people. Like, you're listening for, like, not just what's being said, but what's behind what's being said.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't make it a practice to coach my partners or anything like that, but I can't turn my listening off.
Right.
You know?
Always listening.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just, so when I meet new people, and they're speaking about, you know, we're talking about, like, being attracted to each other, or, like, something like that.
You can kind of hear in the language.
Yeah, you can kind of hear in their speaking, like, you know, where they're at with it. And, you know, I've made the choice for myself where I only want to be in relationships with people who have already chosen to be polyamorous.
Yeah, you don't want to, like, turn them or whatever, or have to be their first experience.
Right, exactly. I was actually talking to a friend of mine who's also polyamorous, and she's in a relationship with someone else who's also polyamorous, and they have their, like, polyamorous little group of, like, partners. I know, they're so cute. They're, like, so ridiculous. Anyway, I love them so much. Anyway, I was having a conversation with her, and we were in agreement. We were just like, yeah, you know, I think that we've reached the time in our life where I don't want to be anybody's experiment. Yeah. You know? Totally. And that's the conversation that I had with my girlfriend when we first started talking about dating. She was like, I don't want to be your experiment. Because I've dated women in the past, but I've never had, like, a girlfriend. Yeah. Right? And so she was like, I don't...
make sure that you're not just, you know...
Right.
Dipping your toes or whatever, and you don't know what you want.
Exactly. Yeah. She's like, I'm not interested in being your experiment. Yeah. Like, that's not what I want. Like, if you want to be in a relationship with me, then, like, I want to know that, like, you're invested in me. Yeah. you know?
Totally.
And I was like 100% like on board the same page. I was like, I agree. Like, I don't want to be anybody's experiment either. So I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And what I told her was like, look, like when we had our first conversation about like, I like you, you know, what is this going to look like? Do we want to start dating? Like, like that beginning conversation, right? I was just like, look, I don't know what this is going to look like. Mm-hmm. And I have no expectations for what it, like, quote unquote, should look like. Like, I don't have any of that. I was like, the only thing that I care about and, like, what I want is that you feel loved and cared for and respected.
That's so beautiful.
And, and so I was like, so regardless of what happens, like, it's my commitment that you're loved and cared for and respected. Yeah. And so I am in no way interested in, like, experimenting.
It seems like that's, like, a good kind of, like, foundational concept. Is that something that you bring into your coaching sessions with people?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Is, like, intentionality is really big. Where it's, like, not just going... And there's nothing wrong with going into things willy-nilly, but if you... there's an impact to doing that. And when you're talking about having a relationship with someone, because if you're like, you know, you want to mess around and you're finding other people who also want to mess around and there's no intentionality behind it, then, but there's still an agreed upon no intentionality.
Right, yeah, we're agreeing this is no strings attached or whatever.
Right, exactly. Like, we're agreeing that
there's like an intention whether you, like, try, even no intention at all in a, like, in the sense of you don't... It's kind of its own intention, because you're almost invoking chaos if you're, like, literally no intention, you know what I mean? Like, you're just like, whatever happens, it's like, okay, well...
But it's still an agreement, right? Yeah. Like, it's still like, we agree that this is nothing, and we're just gonna have fun, and whatever, and if I don't speak to you after tonight, then cool. Yeah. Or however. Anyway. Yeah. And if you're... Like, when I'm coaching people, I'm usually coaching people around relationships. Yeah. And so what I ask is, I ask something like, you know, what's your intention, or what are you committed to? Like, what are you committed to, like, either long-term in the relationship, or what are you committed to for this person specifically? Yeah. Or, you know...
What are you committed to yourself?
What are you committed to yourself? Exactly, like... Or all three of those things. Yeah. Because sometimes it's really important to be like...
Is this matching up?
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's just, like, my intention inside of, like, there's, like, the intention that I have and who I get to be in relationships. And then there's also the intention that I have for my partners. Like, my intention for my girlfriend is that she's loved and cared for and respected. Mm-hmm. But then I can always true myself up to that.
Yeah, wait, what do you mean by true yourself?
Like, I mean, or, like, act in accordance with. Yeah. Right? Like, I'm like, are my actions or my words or, like, in accordance with or in alignment with or however one, or are true to...
My principles.
My, you know, that she's loved and cared for and respected. Yeah. And then, when I'm not doing that, then there's a whole new set of actions to take. It's like, what if I already took... What, you know, this is getting hypothetical, so it's getting a little conceptual. But anyway, you get the point. Yeah.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone who is just starting to explore, like, their possible polyamory?
I would say to be as transparent as possible. Like, hiding out is not going to do you any good. At all. It is only going to cause you upset. Yeah. And the people around you upset. And then you're going to be like, polyamory is stupid. Open relationships are stupid.
Or it's drama.
Or, like, whatever. It's like, no, you just told no one and then decided to do whatever you wanted to do. Yeah, totally. I can see how that would cause drama in your life. Yeah. And that has nothing to do with open relationships. That has to do with the actions that you took.
What if there's someone who maybe, I don't know how to formulate this question, maybe is having a hard time finding other people who are compatible with what they want? Like, what do you, like, because I feel like I feel like I have, like, some friends, for example, who are like, you know, like, I feel like I'm actually bisexual, or like, I feel like I'm actually maybe mostly gay, but they're so surrounded by kind of like straight people that it seems like they're not able to like break out of that. Like, what do you suggest for people who like kind of need to change their whole landscape to match their, I don't know, match a new possible version of them?
Yeah, no, like having an environment that matches who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that the first thing that I would say is just to be patient.
Yeah.
Like, just be patient with yourself and, like, have compassion for yourself and where you're at. And to not make whatever situation you're in, like, bad.
Yeah.
You know? Like, you're just in, you know, for whatever circumstances that your life has led to this point, you have the environment that you have.
Yeah.
And you can change that environment.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, you just do.
Yeah.
Like, there's no
way around
there's
that.
no, like, I've never heard of, or I've never experienced a comfortable transition in my life.
That's a great point.
Like, if someone has, then please call me. Email me, call me, let me know what you did to transition in life comfortably.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
Yeah, well, it's like human beings are like, we're self-preservational, so part of us also is always going to be kind of like, I don't know, it stirs up the mud at the bottom of the water of your mind whenever you're, you know, changing things.
Yeah.
But I really like the concept of, like, even if you realize that maybe the environment that you're in, like, isn't ideal, not just sort of being like, this is bad, my life is bad, the situation is bad, these people are bad, maybe being like, or I think also, like, sort of on the deeply listening front, maybe through deeply listening, you might find that some of the factors of your environment are actually available to be different, sort of, like, whether that's people or your job or your, you know, whatever. Maybe the person that you always see at the grocery store or something actually wants to be your friend, and if you're paying attention, then you figure that out.
Well, and it's also, like, I'll give an example of, like, my parents, like, my immediate family, like, my mom, my dad, and my brother. When I have told them at different, you know, at different transitioning stages of my life, like, that I'm polyamorous and that I'm dating multiple people, and I also date, like, women or people of different genders and, like, things like that, where it's like it's kind of like it is coming out, right?
Yeah.
Where you're, like, coming out is all about, like, introducing your environment to the real you.
That's cool. Yeah.
And people are gonna say whatever they're gonna say about that. And I've found that what some people have, the reactions that I've gotten from people have been surprising in a really good way.
Yeah.
You know? And maybe I'm really lucky in that sense. And I think in some ways I very much am.
Yeah.
Like, really lucky to, like, have...
And we both have a certain type of privilege as, like, white, cis females, too, that's, like, makes it a lot easier.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. It's just, like, and I already have a bunch of people who, like, already kind of
feel your love as a person, so they kind of, like, they might not know that about you, but they, like...
Yeah, so not to, like, devalue, like, me, like, coming out or, like, anything like that, but it's also, you know, I don't have the same struggles as some other people would, right? And
it also is probably good to be open to the idea that maybe what you're thinking is the reaction might be just you thinking of the worst case scenario.
Well, that's the exact point that I was going to make, is that, like, I didn't necessarily... This is a conversation I had with my mom, right? Where she was like, I had no idea what my mom was going to say. Like, no idea. And I grew up with my parents having gay friends and, like, things like that.
That's good.
So I knew that it wasn't going to be terrible.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I knew going into it that it wasn't going to be like, I disown you.
Yeah.
You know, like, I knew that. And I still had no idea what she was going to say.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I had no idea. And it's just, because there's a difference between, like, knowing people that are that way and having a daughter that's like that.
Right, totally.
Right?
You never know what that's going to bring up for somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And I've told her things in the past where I thought that she was going to react in a positive way, and she did not. Like,
so
you know what I mean? So it's just like, I don't know what's going to happen. So anyway, so I called her, and I'm like, I was actually at my girlfriend's house, and I was like sitting on her bed and I was like, I'm gonna call my mom, and like even she was like nervous.
She was
right?
like, ah.
and I was like, hey mom, and we kind of like had like a little chit chat, and then I was like, so I actually called you because I wanted to tell you that I'm dating someone. And she was like, oh, okay. And I was like, and her name's Brandy.
Yes.
And my mom was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, she's probably awesome because you're awesome. And I was like, she is awesome. And like Brandy was up there, and like she was on, and then my mom was on speakerphone, and Brandy was like, hi. Like it was so sweet.
That's
it was
super cute.
It was super cute. It was so sweet. And then literally my mom was like, so how's yoga? Like
Just
that.
change the subject.
Right.
She's probably kind of like, that.
Right. Well, but it was just like,
no, it
was just like not a big deal. Like
that's good.
Exactly. It wasn't because it was like a change the subject, like, oh, like weird thing. It was like change the subject, like,
my parents are like cool. The king and queen of change the subject when they don't know what to say. So I'm just like, oh, they must not know what to say.
No, my mom was
just
a good
like transition.
Yeah, it was more just like, oh,
we talked about that.
Yeah, totally. And I actually had it was similar with my dad and my brother too, where I was like, oh, I'm dating a woman and blah blah blah, and she my dad was like, oh, okay, great. So how's yoga? Like, it was just like, and my brother, same way. And I actually, yeah, totally. And I actually had a conversation with them maybe like a month or so later, and I was like, can I just point out how I'm surprised at you not being surprised at me, like, dating.
Did any of them say, like, we kind of always, like, that it wasn't a surprise at all? Like, we kind of always just knew that that's what
my mom was like, well, it's just not surprising. That like, that was literally what my mom said. I was like, can we just, like, address how, like, I'm surprised, how you're not surprised? And my mom literally was just like, well, but it's just not surprising.
That's awesome.
And I was like, okay.
Okay, cool.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, and so, I had another conversation with a friend of mine who was just like, yeah, you know, it's funny how the people in your environment kind of already know some of those things about you anyway.
Yeah.
And I've only had, and I've been talking to people recently, and like people that I've known for a long time, and some of them have been a little bit surprised.
Yeah.
But not in like a, like, oh my God, I'm so shocked, I don't even know what to say, and do I even know you?
Yeah,
and
do I even know you?
Anything like that. Like, I think the biggest surprise that I've gotten was from one of my best friends, and she was like, really? How long have you been dating women? And I'm like, well, I've always been attracted to women. I've always been attracted to, like, different genders and, like, stuff like that. I've just never, like, seriously pursued a relationship.
Yeah.
I was like, and I've dated, people in the past or whatever. And she was like, oh, okay, well, are you happy? And I was like, yeah, I'm really happy. And she was like, well, great.
Oh.
She's like, I just care that you're happy.
That's perfect.
I know. I'm like, I love you.
Oh. Yeah. It's so, like, fun when you, like, have a change in your life that, like, elevates your happiness levels, like, being able to tell people. I feel like, I don't know, it's just kind of the best when you're happy and everyone's happy for you, and it's just like, damn.
Right. Oh,
everybody's happy for me.
Yeah, I know, isn't it so great? But that goes back to,
like, me telling everyone that I was getting married. I kind of thought that a lot of people would be like, you haven't even been with him for that long, or like, you're too young, or something like that. There's like a couple people who were like that, but like in general, I feel like I've been actually surprised by how many people were like happy and supportive and were like, oh, I want to be a part of it, or I want to help you do this.
No, exactly, because I think that's really perfect, because what originated this train of thought was talking about people who are, coming out, or people who are like, I mean, you can come out in all sorts of ways, right? Like, I don't know if this is like the politically correct way to say this, but like there is a coming out to being like polyamorous, and there's like and there's a coming out to being,
it's like under the queer umbrella sort of too, in a way. Even if you were with at least I feel like, in my opinion, even if you were with, like, even if you were, like, a straight woman, whatever straight, like, with a bunch of men, it's like, that is... Anything that isn't, you know, whatever heteronormative monogamy is kind of, like, into that umbrella of,
Right.
yeah.
Well, because at one point... Well, hold on. I'm going to say this first, and then I'm going to tell a story about how, like, my mom asking me to, like, not share about being polyamorous. Okay, we'll tell that story in a second.
Yes.
Yeah, I just think that people... That it's always surprising how supportive people are.
Yeah.
And there are always going to be some people who are
hater.
like, there's always going to be people that, like, don't like that, or, like, are going to hate on you, or going to give you grief, or, like, you know, anything like that. But
basically, like, there's always some person who's given up on themselves.
Right, well,
momentarily.
We literally just talked about that, like, before the podcast. It's just, like, it has no reflection on you. Like, I really want to stress that. Like, people's reactions... They're not even reacting to you.
At all.
Like, they're not. They are reacting to something in themselves that they're insecure about, or they're afraid about, or, Yeah,
when someone tells you good news, it's like, either, usually, because people are, like, even if you're the nicest person in the world, you're kind of centered around yourself. It's like, you're either thinking, like, oh, I'm so happy they told me that because I was having a bad day and now I can have a better day, or I'm so happy that they're happy because I like hanging out with happy people, or if you're in a really bad mood in a bad place, it's like, God damn it, they're happy and now I can't talk shit on my life or whatever, you know?
Exactly. So really, like, just be who you are. Like, that's the lesson. The lesson, kids. The lesson here is, like, be who you are, and then and then your environment will naturally start to adapt to you.
Yeah.
And you'll also start to find people who, like, are that community for you, you know? And you're never going to find that if you don't open your mouth and start sharing who you are to people. Because I never found... the only reason that I have the people around me that I have around me are because I opened my mouth. Like, us being friends.
Right.
Like...
If we were, like, talking after the yoga classes all the time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
if I was like, oh, she probably doesn't want to talk to me, she's like, you know, she's just... You know, that's the role of the yoga student, is to just quietly do yoga and leave, then we might be friends.
Exactly. It's just like, but you can't create that environment around you unless you open your mouth and just truly, authentically be yourself. And it's scary. It is scary to be yourself. It is scary to tell the truth about yourself. And it's so freeing. Like, the love that I have in my life, like, love dripping from the walls. Yes. I have love dripping from the walls of my life, but it's just by virtue of, like, me saying out loud who I am. Yeah. And then I have people in my life that are like,
I love that.
I love that.
Yes. That's awesome.
Yeah, and what I created, because I'm going through a divorce, which is unfortunate, and we haven't been married for very long, and so, again, there's a lot of, like, reactions to that, and, like, people that are hurt and, like, upset, and just in all sorts of different like, people are either, you know, they're supportive, or just, I'm happy if you're happy, or, like, you suck, or, like, people are in whatever space that they're in, and I love them all. Like, it's like, it's all valid. Like, everyone's reaction or perception or opinion or anything like that about what's going on in my life is completely valid. Yeah. And it also doesn't have to have weight on what makes me happy. Yeah. You know? And the point of me saying that is that, so I'm going through divorce, and I created, I was like, okay, for my next relationship, which I didn't think was going to be as soon as it was. Like, it's very surreal. Yeah. But I was just like, okay, well, you know, looking to the future, if I'm going to create the relationship that is, like, going to work for me, like, what do I want to manifest or create or pull for? I was just like, you know, I want a relationship that's a celebration. Yes. Like, I want a relationship that's, like, the person who I'm with celebrates me for every single thing that I am and every single thing that I'm not. Yes. And I get to celebrate that person for every single thing that they are and every single thing that they're not. Yes. And that our relationship is just an expression of joy and, like, self-expression in the world.
And you just manifest
and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later, I'm, like, confessing my love to Brandy drunkenly at my New Year's Eve party. Whatever. Like,
oh Oh my god! I feel like after a bad long-term relationship that I was in right after. Well, I broke up with him, got together with Anders on the same day. But I feel like it was like I feel like coming to the realization that like it's not selfish to want your partner to like, obviously everyone has things that they need to work on, and like
Sure.
I wouldn't say even that like flaws is a very good word, but like maybe there's, you know, things that you could work on to make, you know, things easier, but it's like it's not selfish to want your partner to love everything about you. Like, it's like all, like, they might not be like, I equally love your weird geekiness about this topic, but they should love that you're geek about that topic because it's a part of you, and that's totally, like, it's, I think that women especially are sort of, like, conditioned to be like, oh, well, you know, if he likes most of you, that's good enough, and maybe you can change a little bit of this and that for that person, and it's like, no.
Yeah,
you should be you.
Totally, exactly. And that was one of the things that didn't work about my marriage, is that, like, you know, I realized that both of us were trying to change the other person, you know?
It's like you can't really change anyone if you're trying to change them, especially.
Right, exactly. And it all comes from a place of, like, you need to be fixed, right? Which no one needs to be fixed. Like, I'm of the opinion that no one needs to be like, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, if I, like, did an autopsy on you, like, I wouldn't find here's the wrong portion.
Here's the wrong part.
Here's the wrong, there it is. We'll just take that out.
Take that out, and then it'll be great. And then,
no, like, there's nothing, like, inherently wrong with anybody.
Yeah.
It's just, and we live like there is. Like, we live like there's something wrong with this person, there's something wrong with that person, and then it, like, manifests in the partnerships that we have. We're like, it shouldn't, and it doesn't sound like, it's not like you're going to say to your partner, like, there's something wrong with you.
Right.
But you might say to other people, like, I wish that they were this way. Or, like, they should be.
The only thing that kind of bothers me.
Right,
or,
right. And it's just, like, and it comes out in these, like, subtle ways.
Yeah.
And, or not so, in some cases, not so subtle ways. Certainly in my relationship, it wasn't that subtle.
Like, excuse me, I don't like the fun.
Oh my god. But it was just like, you know, but it's just like, so what I learned from, you know, because it's all a learning experience, right? Like, life is like this huge learning experience, and I am in no way in a position to say that I have it figured out at all. Like, but I'm always learning, and I think that that's really important. And what I learned from my marriage was that, you know, there's no room in love, in unconditional love. There's no room to fix or change someone.
Well, it's like, it's like,
know? There's that,
by
like,
definition, but it's like, until you felt unconditional love, you can't really even know that, you know?
Yeah,
because, like, I feel like I used to think unconditional love is like, well, I'm, like, you're ride or die. I'm going, even, no matter what fucked up thing you do, I'd still be there, but really it's like it's like you're already assuming that, like, there's going to be a test and I'll pass the test. But it's like, that's not what unconditional love is. It's like not, first of all, so nobody should be, like, doing anything to you that's, like, that much of a test in terms of, like, I don't know. Like, I think that I sort of thought that because I was in an emotionally abusive relationship, that putting up with the emotional abuse was, like, my unconditional love. Right, totally. And it's like, no. First of all, that's totally fucked up. Second of all, like, that's just you being a martyr, basically, and you don't unconditionally love them. You're just, you know, trying to make it work or whatever, but it's like... Yeah,
totally. And unconditional love starts with you.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. If you're being a martyr and you're like, I'm dying on the cross of my own life, then... Right. And then you don't love yourself enough to be like, I'm not gonna die on the cross of my own life. It's so lame.
Yeah. Well, it's like, okay, this is
so... why are they asking me to do that?
Right, exactly. And yeah. And it's so, what I thought of when you just said that was, like, the RuPaul quote where he's like, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell you're gonna love anybody else? Right? But it's so true. If you don't love yourself, like, if you fundamentally think that there's something wrong with you, you're going to find a partner that also thinks that thing is wrong with you.
True.
You know?
I think that a lack of self-love is one of, like, the biggest problems in the world. Like, in terms of, I think that people who, you know, exploit other people and, like, the power dynamics of the world and all of that. Because if you really love yourself, you also don't need anything more than what you need plus, like, you know, what you want. I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of people either they don't ask enough from the world to make themselves happy, or they're so unhappy that they just take so much from other people in the world. And I think that what you're doing with your coaching and, like, your work in general is, like, important for, you know, healing those deeper wounds that totally reflect out in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually having that conversation with somebody the other day where they were talking about, I met someone the other day who, not like a partner, just like just having a conversation with a person that I randomly met. And he, for his work is all about, like, self-defense. Like, he does martial arts.
That's cool.
Right? And so we were talking about having to, like, what the purpose of fighting, like, physically fighting someone is, and, like, what place that has. Like, what role does using physical violence
against someone
play
else.
In life. And, like, and we were both talking about how that should be, like, the last resort. And so he's
coming out of a place of, at the end of the day, like, a self-love. Like, you can yell at me on the street and I'll walk away, but if you start to hurt me, I do love myself enough that I'm not going to let you hurt me.
Yeah, totally. And so we were talking about how our jobs are kind of, like, on the opposite end of the spectrum, where he's like, okay, at the end of the day, like, if this needs to happen, like, then you gotta know how to do it. You gotta know how to do it.
Yeah.
And he also teaches in his classes, like, look, this is the last resort, and the first thing that you want is, like, de-escalation.
Yes.
Anyway. And I was saying, I'm on the exact opposite end of that spectrum where I'm like, okay, like, what is the source?
Yeah.
Like, what is the source inside of people that would have that? Because I'm like, he was giving an example of this guy that he did actually end up getting in a physical fight with because he was abusing this animal.
Oh.
And, like, couldn't
there was no way to
there was no way to de-escalate it. And
that's horrible.
I know, it was like this terrible story.
Like, worst case scenario.
But then I was exactly, and I was like, well, and he said that in the guy who he fought took him to court and was like, for physically.
But also animal abuse is illegal, so
also animal abuse is illegal. He actually didn't. Just given it wasn't in Washington, it was in a different state. Anyway, we don't have to go into the details of it, but the point being is that the judge was, like, agreed with him for, like, even though the judge couldn't do anything about it because the law was the way that the law was in that state. But the judge was like, look, I think that you made the right decision in stepping in. Yeah. And the law is the way that the law is in this state, and I have to charge you for assault.
Go to jail.
Yeah. I know. But anyway, that's besides the point. And what we started talking about was, you know, what was the source of that conflict? Yeah. Because the source of that conflict was not that day that man decided to attack or hurt, like, that dog. Yeah. Right? The source was probably something that happened in his childhood that started manifesting in him that was like, violence is okay, violence against animals is okay, you know, like, I have to do da-da-da-da-da, like, something happened to him as a child, he made a decision, and, like, from that point on, it led to that moment when there's a man in his 40s abusing an animal. Yeah. Right? And so...
It's the source of the story that he's telling about himself in the world that
created
that situation where he felt that was justified or necessary.
Exactly, because he obviously felt justified by that. Yeah. Like, he was in his mind, whether it's right or wrong or good or bad or otherwise, in his mind, he was like, this is okay. Yeah. You know? And that didn't manifest that day. Like, that was not something that he just thought of. Yeah. So, what I do is start to dismantle those stories in people, you know, and beating a dog is a very extreme example, like, but we've all made stories up that manifest in our day-to-day life. You know, we've all made stories up like, I'm not good enough, or it's okay to belittle people, or it's okay to, like, I don't know. What's an example? It's okay to not like a certain group of people, you know, like it's whatever.
Because of the story that you're telling.
Because of the story that either someone told you or you made up yourself. Yeah. You know, and so it's my job to actually like dismantle that. Yeah. Because, and I, again, having this conversation with this guy who's the martial arts guy, and I was like, look, like, I know that we're not going to live in a world of, like, puppies and unicorns and rainbows. Like, I know that there's always going to be people who do bad things. Yeah. And in my lifetime, I have a goal. I have a personal goal to limit the way, the nasty ways that we treat each other. You know, and the way that I do that is by teaching people how to love each other.
If you're in love mode, it's kind of like hard to. It's sort of like a protective block against like the nastiness, actually.
Yeah, well, then you actually, because love leads to gratitude. Right. Love leads to compassion. Right. You know, love leads to, you know, like caring about another human being. You know, love leads to sympathy and empathy. And love leads to joy and happiness. What's a Legally Blonde quote? She's like, and happy people just don't shoot their husbands. Like,
that's really funny. But it's like, it's true.
Yeah, but it's true. Yeah. She's like, happy people don't shoot their husbands.
Yeah. Like, if you're, you know, if you are deeply enjoying your life and somebody cuts you off on the road, it's kind of like, wow, okay. You know?
Right, like, they must be having a bad day.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Like, go
ahead. But seriously, though, you know, so, like, I'm on the opposite end of that, where I'm just like, no, what is the source of that behavior? And, like, and in discovering that, you know, and discovering your own self-love, and discovering, you know, ways in which you can empower yourself and author your own stories about yourself, instead of acting from that default mode of something that you made up a long time ago. Yeah. And, like, dismantling that and actually starting to author your own life instead of having it be dictated by some unknown circumstances.
It's like a crutch where it's like, oh, this feels more comfortable because I pretty much know what will happen if I go down the path of the stories I've told about myself. But it's like, you have to get to the point where you're more afraid of stagnancy than you are of change. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, well, it definitely, I mean, that's a totally different conversation where there's also the willingness and the want to, you know? Yeah. But I think that, and again, going back to the creating an environment conversation, where it's like, once you start to discover those things about yourself, and you start to share yourself authentically with people, you start to have that, your environment starts to pull for that.
Yeah, law of attraction.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you start to find more people that are like that, or the people who are already in your environment are like, wow, like, I now want to be like that. Yeah. Like, I'm inspired. Totally. Like, I now want to be the author of my life. I now want to, you know, speak my truth. Like, I now, like, you've inspired me to do that, right? And I created this mantra for this year, actually. I'm like, okay, who am I creating myself to be in the year of 2019? And I created 2019 to be the year of adventure.
Yes!
Yes!
Oh, that's such a good... Yes.
And I created 2019 to be the year of adventure, and I also created, I'm like, okay, who am I going to be this year? I'm like, who I am, like, fundamentally is unconditional love. Like, the story that I'm authoring about myself is that I am unconditional love.
Dripping off the walls.
And I have love dripping off the walls. Yes. And when I'm free, like, how I'm going to impact and how I'm going to like, create the impact that I want to see is that when I'm free, other people get to be free.
Yeah.
You know? And so I've just started sharing authentically about everything in my life.
That's awesome.
And I've already had people who are like, wow, like I posted something the other day and somebody was like, not everybody is brave enough to post things like this, and I'm so glad that you did.
Yeah.
Because you're giving voice to something that people don't share about.
Posting?
It was about polyamory.
Nice.
Yes.
Yes. And that's awesome that I'm so excited for this podcast to grow into fruition, because it allows you a greater audience for spreading that freedom, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think that, this is a really good, starting off conversation, right? And I think that each week, if there's, a theme...
Yeah.
And then we'll have a theme of each week and be able to cover different subjects more succinctly instead of talking about things so broadly.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Well, I think we did a show.
We totally did.
We did a show. All right. Well, Elizabeth, this conversation has been awesome, and I'm so excited for more episodes of Love Dripping from the Walls, and I'm really happy that I could facilitate this and that we're able to have these conversations.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I so appreciate you, and I'm so glad that we met because we both we both opened our mouths and we're like, hey, look, this is who I am in the world. And I'm like, hey, look, this is who I am in the world. And we're like, oh my God, we should do stuff in the world together. Adventure. Yeah, yes. No, I'm so excited. Thank you so much. And I just love you.
I love you too. Bye, world.
Thank you for being a part of our conversation. And if you like what you heard today, you can follow me on Instagram, Love Dripping from the Walls. You can also follow on Facebook, Love Dripping from the Walls. And if you have any questions, comments, feedback, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you, and listen into our next episodes with me and people that I know and love and adore, talking about love in our life.